Hello there, so highlighters, they're pretty nifty. They let you mark some words with bright colors to emphasize them and make them easier to remember. But highlighters are only good if you highlight a few things. You can't just highlight the whole dang page. I mean, you could, but you definitely shouldn't. If you're going to highlight a few words, then you should highlight the important ones, the ones that matter, the ones that you want to stand out. Mapping is very similar to this. As a mapper, you have one task: to artistically represent a song via a beat map. Naturally, songs tend to be dynamic, meaning they aren't monotonous and change in intensity, speed, melody, volume, etc. Part of your job as a mapper is to represent and emphasize these changes in gameplay, as well as sounds that stand out in the song. Now let's talk about ways you can emphasize things. You can emphasize in several ways, but it all depends on what you're emphasizing. You can emphasize sections of a song, or you can emphasize specific sounds that stand out in the song. We can emphasize sections in several ways. We can emphasize with key eye time, slider velocity changes, volume changes, and rhythm intensity changes. Slider velocity is used to reflect the intensity of a song. The song becomes more intense, then you generally increase the slider velocity of that section. The song becomes less intense, you lower the slider velocity. Volume changes are used more or less in the same way as slider velocity changes, but instead of reflecting intensity, volume changes are mainly used for, you guessed it, changes in volume of the song. Rhythm intensity works much the same way as slider velocity changes. You use more intense rhythm for more intense sections of the song, and vice versa. We can emphasize specific sounds in several ways. We can emphasize with finishers, slider velocity changes, volume changes, note color usage, and breaks. There's a big, loud, and prominent sound in the song, you can go ahead and map it with a finisher. The color of the finisher is just dictated by note color basics. One thing to note is that finishers go hand in hand with another form of emphasis: breaks. Breaks by themselves aren't that great and are mostly used for the intended purpose, to give the player a break, but breaks and finishers are a killer combo when it comes to emphasizing sounds in taiko. The reason why is because finishers are big. They look different during gameplay and are played differently compared to other notes. They're important. Therefore, finishers stand out, but if there's a note right after a finisher, it's hard for them to stand out. But a break placed right after a finisher can make the finisher stand out even more. Let's look at an example of this in action with my map of Megadeth's Tornado of Souls. This is the currently ranked version of the map. Now let's look at the same map but with notes after every finisher. It feels wrong, doesn't it? It's almost as if the map has just turned to a run-on sentence with no commas or breaks, just a continuous stream of words that can be very tiring to say and to listen to because it just goes on and on and on. You can never catch your breath, right? Now let's talk about other ways you can emphasize specific sounds. You can emphasize big changes in pitches with note color usage. Let's say that there's a triplet in the song. The first note is very low in pitch. The second note is higher in pitch than the first by quite a bit, but the last note is super high in pitch even compared to the second note. Now the question is, how would you map this? You can technically map this triplet as a DKK, since the first note is very low and the other two are higher than the first. But let's think with emphasis in mind. Remember, the last note is a lot higher in pitch compared to the other two, and with that in mind, you would map the triplet as a DDK because the K is representing the fact that the last note is super high pitched compared to the first two. Now slider velocity changes. This is actually a pretty uncommon way to emphasize. It's mostly used in harder maps or maps that have a lot of SV changes. Here's a perfect example of this in action. And lastly, volume changes. If the sound is loud, you make the note that is representing it loud as well. This is another uncommon way to emphasize and is used a lot in conjunction with SV changes for specific sounds. So what even is worth emphasizing? In my opinion, I think that the things that are worth emphasizing are changes in tempo, volume, harmony, intensity, and specific important / loud sounds. Let's look at an example of emphasizing changes in the music. Let's listen to a portion of the song Sentou Densetsu no Pokemon from the game Pokemon Black and White. So at around 46 seconds, the song slows down drastically and it's a lot more calmer than how it was just a few seconds ago. But then the song quickly picks up in pace again and goes back to its original intensity. This is a very iconic part of the song and in my opinion is what makes the song. We can emphasize this section by lowering the slider velocity as well as the volume hit sounds. In addition to that, we can also have easier rhythm to reflect the lower intensity of the song. And then when the song speeds up, we can do the opposite, increase slider velocity, volume, and have more intense rhythms once again. Here is my interpretation of that section of the song. Let's look at an example of individual sounds that are worth emphasizing. Let's listen to a section of the song Oath of the Demon from the game Yakuza 0. In this section, there are some synth noises followed by 3 very prominent crash cymbals. I would consider these crash cymbals worth mapping as well as emphasizing. We can emphasize those symbols by mapping them with finishers and having no notes in between. This is my interpretation of that section. Remember, when it comes to emphasizing, a little goes a long way. You can't just highlight the whole dang map. And that's it for emphasizing. This isn't the very basics. In my opinion, this is the most of what there is to learn about emphasizing. It's a pretty simple concept that is easy to implement but can greatly improve your maps. Now before I head out, I just wanted to say that all of the scripts for my videos are in a public Google document. So if you're an experienced mapper that just wants to help by adding comments and leaving suggestions, or if you're just someone that is actually using these videos to learn and just wants to read it, I'll have the link for it down below. And that's it for the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which will be about the taiko ranking criteria. And don't worry, the taiko ranking criteria is actually pretty simple and straightforward, and you can actually memorize it in a day or two. Anywho, see ya.